Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. It was a blustery day in the 100-acre wood. Winnie the Pooh was strolling towards his thoughtful spot. This was his special place for sitting and thinking. As Pooh walked along, he made up a special blustery day hum about the wind blowing through the leaves on the trees. When Pooh arrived at his thoughtful spot, he sat down on a log. "Think, think, think," he said, tapping his head. Then, suddenly, Pooh did have a thought. "Why, it's Wednesday," he cried. "This is my favorite day for visiting people. I shall start with my dear friend Piglet." Now, Piglet lived in a grand old house in a large beech tree. When Pooh arrived, Piglet was sweeping leaves away from the front door. I don't mind the leaves that are leaving. It's the leaves that are coming that bother me," he said to Pooh. "Happy Wednesday, Piglet," said Pooh. But before Piglet had time to reply, a gust of wind blew very hard and lifted Piglet up into the air. "Help me, Pooh!" he cried. Pooh tried to grab Piglet, but all he caught was the end of his scarf. It started to unravel like a ball of string. "Oh my!" cried Pooh. "Piglet's flying like a kite!" He held on to the end of the scarf and tried to keep up with his friend. As they raced along, Pooh passed straight through Eeyore's house and Rabbit's carrot patch. "Happy Wednesday, Eeyore! Happy Wednesday, Rabbit!" shouted Pooh. Then an even bigger gust of wind lifted Pooh right off the ground too. The wind blew so hard that Pooh and Piglet landed with a crash against the door in Owl's treetop house. Owl was woken from a peaceful snooze by the loud noise. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw his friends' faces pressed against the window. "This is a surprise," Owl said. "Do come in for a cup of tea." He opened the door, and Pooh and Piglet blew in. "Happy Wednesday, Owl," said Pooh. While Owl chatted to his friends, the wind shook his house backwards and forwards. Then, all of a sudden, the wind blew very hard. The house crashed to the ground with Owl, Pooh, and Piglet inside. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the house was in a terrible mess. Christopher Robin and Pooh's other friends came running over to help. "I don't think we will ever be able to fix it," said Christopher Robin, shaking his head sadly. "You'll be needing another house, Owl."
"You'll be needing another house, Owl," said Eeyore. "It might take a day or two, but I'll find one."
And Eeyore went off to begin his search. The very blustery day turned into a very blustery night. Outside Pooh's house, it rained and rained and rained. By morning, nearly all of the 100-acre wood was flooded. When Pooh woke up, he found his honey pots floating in the water. As Pooh got dressed, he decided that it would be a good idea to eat some honey before it all floated away. Pooh was licking out the honey at the very bottom of a pot when he realized that his head was stuck. Before he could free himself, Pooh began bobbing in the water. He floated right out of the door with his head in the pot and his legs sticking up in the air. At Piglet's house, the water was coming in through the window. He had just written a note that read, "Help! Piglet, me!" He put the note in a bottle. The bottle floated out of the window and out of sight. Piglet clung to a chair, but very soon he floated out of the window and out of sight too. Now Christopher Robin lived on a hill where the water could not reach. Everyone made their way to his house to shelter from the flood. Owl was up in a tree keeping watch. He saw Rabbit, Kanga, and Roo arrive in an umbrella which Tigger was paddling, but there was no sign of Pooh or Piglet. Suddenly, Roo spotted the floating bottle with Piglet's note inside. Christopher Robin read the note out loud. When Owl heard that Piglet needed help, he flew off into the wood to search him. As Owl flew over the wood, he spotted Pooh and Piglet floating along in the water. They were heading towards a huge waterfall. Piglet disappeared in a gush of water. "Hold on, Piglet, I'm right behind you," cried Pooh. Minutes later, a very wet Pooh and Piglet appeared on the other side of the waterfall. They floated towards Christopher Robin's house. Now Pooh was sitting on the chair and Piglet was stuck in the honey pot. All Pooh and Piglet's friends were waiting at the edge of the water to greet them as they drifted in. "Well done, Pooh Bear," said Christopher Robin, giving Pooh a big hug. "You've rescued Piglet. You're a hero." "I am," said Pooh. "You are," Christopher Robin told him. "As soon as the flood is over, I will give you a hero's party." And so, when at last the 100-acre wood had dried out, everyone joined in the hero's party. Everyone except for Eeyore, that is. He was still searching for a new home for Owl. At last Eeyore appeared.
"I found Owl a house," he said. "Follow me."
Christopher Robin, Tigger, Piglet, Pooh, Owl, Rabbit, Kanga and Roo followed Eeyore through the 100-acre wood. Eeyore led them to Piglet's house in the beech tree. He stood in front of Piglet's front door and asked everyone to take a good look at Owl's new home. No one said a word. "Well," said Christopher Robin at last, "this would make a perfect house for Owl." Everyone turned to look at Piglet. Piglet looked up his beautiful house and gulped. And then he did a very kind and noble thing. "Yes," he said, "this is just the house for Owl. I hope he will be very happy in it." Pooh looked at his little friend and whispered in his ear. "That was a noble thing to do." Then Pooh said, "Piglet, you can come and live with me." Piglet accepted at once. "Thank you, Pooh," he said happily. So Christopher Robin gave a party for 2 heroes. Pooh was a hero for saving Piglet's life, and Piglet was a hero for giving Owl a new home. Pooh and all his friends had a wonderful time at the hero's party. The blustery day hadn't turned out to be quite so bad after all.